Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Create Harem with Hinata and Ino Council Bashing Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and check description and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Young Naruto Uzumaki, after another harsh day at the academy, where Sakura spurned him, Sasuke made fun of him and Iruka scolded him, again, made his way to his apartment. His apartment was a small one-room, which made sense since he was an orphan. The kitchen was clean because Naruto almost didn't use it, he preferred making instant ramen instead of actually cooking something, not that he knew how to cook anything. His bedroom was a simple one, he had a single bed, a small TV on the top of a cabinet and a small wardrobe, filled with his orange jumpsuits. The green walls were dirtied. Naruto never cared about tidiness and also never bothered to clean the walls or paint them. With exception of the small bathroom, the entire apartment floor was made of wood. Finally, reaching his small living room, which also served as his dining room, there were, besides the desk and chairs from the dining room part, a coffee table and an old sofa where an unexpected visitor waited. The visitor was no one other than Hiruzen Sarutobi. He, alongside with Ayame and Tsuki Ichiraku, was one of the people that truly cared about Naruto. The aged man was wearing his traditional Kage outfit. Naruto, upon seeing the man he considered his grandfather, quickly dropped his backpack and ran towards Hiruzen, hugging him. The Hokage made an habit of checking Naruto at least once a month. He already visited him last week, so Naruto was pleasantly surprised in seeing him at his living room. The reason that made the Hokage leave his office, and his damned paperwork, was to talk with Naruto about his academy performance. Naruto already failed the academy twice, and if he were to fail again he would be expelled from the academy. While most of the children entered academy at age 8, Naruto enrolled shortly after his 6th anniversary, so age-wise he wasn't actually behind his classmates. However, Naruto grades were always bottom half. He couldn't use any ninjutsu or properly mold chakra and his knowledge was abysmal to say the least. The only part of the curriculum that Naruto actually was above average were his taijutsu, where Naruto mostly excelled due to his willpower and stamina, and stealth, where his pranking nature made him top 3, losing only to Sasuke, the last Uchiha, and Shino Aburame, the heir to the Aburame clan. Feeling that he was failing Minato, who already had his final wish of Naruto being regarded as a hero, denied by the sheer ignorance of the villagers, Sarutobi decided to have a talk with Naruto. Naruto, please sit down, we need to talk, the Hokage said, gesturing to the unoccupied seat beside him. After Naruto released the hug and went to sit on the sofa, he looked at the Hokage, clearly interested in his apparition. Clearing his throat, Hiruzen looked at the sky-blue eyes of Naruto. Naruto, I'm here to talk about your grades at the academy. Seeing Naruto's expression change from interest to sadness, the Hokage knew that something was truly bothering Naruto. I don't know what's happening, Gigi. I tried to study but the questions are always difficult. No matter what I do, I'm always making mistakes. Naruto said in a resignation. And you've paid attention to the classes? Yes, but the teachers are always ignoring me, like the rest of the village. Naruto said, the last part of the sentence in a mumbled tone so only Hiruzen could hear. Hiruzen felt ashamed of this, teachers who were supposed to help the students playing favorites and ignoring a student. Okay, I'll help you study. What was the subject of the class today? The Great Ninja War. I see, the first, the second, or the third? Naruto looked dumbfounded at the Hokage, before shouting, what? There was more than one. After looking at Naruto like he grew a second head, Hiruzen asked for him to show his academy book, already suspecting what was happening. The instructors were sabotaging Naruto. His suspicions were proven correct as he opened Naruto's book. The book was extremely old, probably from the early years of his tenure as a Hokage. Information was clearly lacking, and with exception of the cover, that was replaced to the one the actualized books had, every page was yellow of age and several sentences were unreadable. Hiruzen then patted Naruto at his head and asked him to go to his office tomorrow after class, so he would be able to help him. After leaving Naruto's apartment, Hiruzen decided that he would hide himself in class tomorrow, so he could see firsthand what the treatment Naruto received from the instructors was. Next day, Hiruzen made his way to the classroom after activating the Totenjutsu, transparent escape technique, that allowed him to sneak upon the class and the instructors. Remaining transparent, the Hokage confirmed his suspicions of the teachers ignoring Naruto. During the ninjutsu training, the trend continued, when one of the teachers who were helping each student individually jumped Naruto, choosing to praise Sasuke for his mastery of the Kawarimi instead. By Naruto's unsurprised and emotionless expression, Hiruzen realized that this happened more than once. Finally, at the taijutsu practice, Hiruzen noted that the taijutsu instructor was intentionally teaching Naruto a sloppy and ineffective taijutsu instance that allowed him to quickly be pommeled by Sasuke at the final spar, much to the fangirls and the instructor's delight. The unique highlight of his visit was seeing that Iruka Yumino, one of the academy teachers, who lost his parents during the Kyuubi attack, helped Naruto at the shuriken practice. Seeing what he needed to see, Hiruzen retreated to his office. The Hokage knew that Naruto would visit him soon, so he quickly formulated a plan. Instead of punishing the instructors directly, he decided to help Naruto become self-sufficient, so the young boy wouldn't need help from the instructors. This also applied to his normal life. If given the right guidance, Naruto could easily live all by himself and well. Hiruzen, when visiting him last night, noted that his apartment was dirty and that Naruto didn't feed himself properly. And finally, he could prove Danzo, who constantly nagged him about transforming Naruto at the ultimate weapon, and most of the villagers wrong, and show through hard work and determination that Naruto wasn't the Kyuubi. Hiruzen was taken out of his thoughts when the door of his office opened, revealing Naruto. Hiruzen quickly gestured him to take a seat, which the boy promptly agreed. So, how are you going to help me, Gigi? Naruto, before anything I must say something important. As Naruto nodded his head, showing that he was listening, the Hokage took a deep breath before continuing, Naruto, the reason why you were falling behind your class is that the instructors were sabotaging you. Seeing the boy's questioning expression, Hiruzen proceeded, I watched today's class and it came to my attention that the instructors, besides giving you outdated material, were ignoring you during the lectures and ninjutsu training and intentionally taught you a botched taijutsu instance. Naruto stared blankly at the Hokage for a few seconds, then his expression turned to sadness, then angriness, and finally despair. Why everyone hates me? Naruto asked, almost crying. Now Hiruzen was at a dilemma. He could invent a history or tell the truth. He knew that Naruto probably would accept the fake history, but Sarutobi knew that if he did this he wouldn't be better than anybody else. Steeling his resolve, he made a decision that would change the fate of the entire world. Naruto, what do you know about the Kyuubi? It all made sense. Demon spawn, demon brat, damned fox. Finally it all made sense to Naruto. He was Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, the nine-tailed fox. Naruto first denied the fact, then he lost his words, then he accepted. After accepting, Naruto realized he was the Kyuubi. He killed thousands of people and destroyed the village he now called home. After 30 minutes of crying, Naruto looked upon the Hokage, who was patiently waiting for Naruto to recompose himself. I'm sorry for everything I did, Gigi. Naruto stated before getting up from his chair and running towards the door. But he was stopped when he crashed against the arms of the Hokage, who quickly stood between Naruto and the door and engulfed him in a hug. After some more sobbing, Naruto asked, why don't you hate me, Gigi? The Hokage gave the Jinchuriki a smile before getting up. He quickly withdrew a scroll from one of the bookshelves and laid it on the table. After this he drew a kunai and put it alongside the scroll. What do you see there? He asked, pointing to the items. A scroll and a kunai. Naruto responded. Very good, they are different, aren't they? He asked, getting a nod from Naruto. Now, he continued, quickly sealing the kunai into the scroll, what do you see? You sealed the kunai inside the scroll. Naruto stated. Very good, Naruto, but tell me, just because there's a kunai sealed inside it, the scroll will stop being a scroll. Seeing Naruto shake his head negatively, Sarutobi continued. Naruto, you're the scroll, the Kyuubi is the kunai, you won't stop being Naruto just because the Kyuubi is inside you. Naruto nodded his head, showing that he understood. But then he frowned. Gigi, if things are like you said, why the rest of the village hates me? Well, they're blinded by the fear, most of them also didn't know about the quality of the seal, so they think that you are actually the Kyuubi. The young blonde and the aged Hokage kept talking for a few hours. Naruto learned more about his seal, and the Hokage assured that the Kyuubi wouldn't take over as long as he controlled his emotions. Naruto also learned that the Yondaime wished him to be viewed as a hero, but blind hatred made him into a scapegoat. Finally, the Sandaime explained about his law that prevented the adults about telling the kids about the Kyuubi, so the children would see him as Naruto and not the Kyuubi, and how it backfired as the kids mirrored their parents' behavior towards Naruto. By the time the two finally finished discussing the Kyuubi topic, it was already night and the Hokage offered to treat Naruto some ramen from Ichiraku's. At the Ichiraku's, Naruto and Hiruzen made their way to the Ichiraku's, Naruto's favorite ramen stand. Even though Naruto loved ramen, his affection to the Ichiraku's was because here he was treated like family. Whilst the most expensive restaurants and even some stores refused to sell anything to Naruto, Tsuki and Ayame always treated him well. After placing their orders, which made Hiruzen frighten a little bit because of the sheer amount of ramen Naruto ordered, they continued their conversation. Naruto, I'm going to ask a very serious question and I'd like you to answer honestly as possible. This got Naruto's attention, as he perked up and looked at the Hokage expectantly. Do you hate Konoha for everything you've been through? Naruto made a contemplative pose, putting his hand on his chin before replying. No, but I don't hate Konoha, but I maybe hate the villagers. Sighing and taking a deep breath, the blonde continued, after what you said to me earlier, I understand why they could fear me, but I didn't do anything to make their assumptions true. Naruto, since you were young you claimed you wanted to be Hokage, is this still something you still want? Honestly, I think it's not even possible for me to become Hokage anymore. I'd never get the villagers' support. You told me earlier that the big clans don't hate me, but I don't think that it's possible for me to be elected for Hokage without the civilians backing, right? If I died without stating who I wanted to succeed me, yes. But if I decided to back down from the post and with some backing, it would still be possible to select someone without the civilians' support as long as I have the Shinobi Council backing. I see, but answering your question, whilst being Hokage still has a shine for me, I don't feel like setting this as a goal anymore. Anymore? So you have a new goal? Hiruzen asked, looking at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Sort of. Now I'd like to become stronger so I can protect you, old man Tsuki and Ayame Nichan. Gracing a smile, Hiruzen complimented the blonde, a noble goal indeed. The duo kept eating in silence. As Hiruzen finished his pork ramen, Naruto was already on his way to his 7th bowl of the day. Fearing for Konoha's economic situation due to the massive drain caused by Naruto and his ramen addiction, Sarutobi decided to speak again. Naruto, what we're going to do about the academy? You want me to talk with the teachers? Sarutobi asked, stressing the talk word. Naruto, while still acted dumb, knew this talk would be very painful for the instructor. Even though he wanted to see those dumbasses put in their places, Naruto dismissed the idea. I see, Sarutobi mused after Naruto's dismissal of his idea. You're willing to let them go freely after what they did to you? The Hokage asked, raising an eyebrow. I never said that. I guess some hard pranking is in order, and you're going to help me. Naruto replied with some real hardcore grin that sent some shivers down Sarutobi's spine. Oh Kami, I think I've created a monster. Time was running low, 4 on his left, another 4 on his right, 2 towering from above. Naruto had to act quickly. Drawing 4 shurikens from his weapon pouch, Naruto hit the 2 targets on the left, one on the right and one above. Time was a factor. Time to get extra flashy. Jumping backwards in a black flip motion, Naruto withdrew 2 kunais from his holster strapped on his right leg, hitting the final target above and another one on his right. Before reaching the ground, Naruto fired 2 shurikens up front, without any clear target, whereas the remaining targets stood on the edge of his peripheral vision. Pulling a wire with his left pinky finger, altering the trajectory of one of the weapons so it would head right. Then, jerking his head left, Naruto revealed another wire, this one pulled by his teeth. This wire, attached to the other shuriken, changed the projectile path to the right. In his final movement before landing on the ground, Naruto controlled the pinky shuriken to collide with the teeth shuriken. As the weapons collided, Naruto let go of the wires, effectively sending a shuriken towards his left whilst the other one headed towards his right. Gracefully landing on his feet, Naruto contemplated his work. 10 targets, 10 perfect shots. Very good, Naruto. 10 out of 10. Came the voice of Iruka Umino. Standing with 5 feet 8 inches, with olive skin, black eyes and brown hair styled in a ponytail, his most distinguishing feature being the scar that crossed his nose bridge. This man was one of the precious people Naruto gained in the last 4 years. Naruto and Iruka had an rough start, as the Jinchuriki often pranked the instructor. However, after his talk with the Sandaime 4 years ago, Naruto came to realize that he and Iruka were very alike. They were both orphans and craved attention. One day after class ended, Iruka asked to talk with Naruto. That was the day he gained an older brother. Flashback start. 3 months after his talk with the Hokage, Naruto found himself in another extremely boring lecture from Iruka. He was sleeping alongside Choji Akamichi and Shikamaru Nara as he didn't saw any point in paying attention to this class. After some time, Iruka noticed the slacking trio and went to scold them about paying attention to the lectures. Choji and Shikamaru didn't seem bothered by Iruka's scolding, but Naruto was extremely angry because in the past he in fact paid attention to the class but never learned anything due to the instructors constantly sabotaging his progress. Naruto decided that payback was in order. Instead of pranking, he decided to show Iruka and everyone in class that he didn't needed them. So, during the day, Naruto would constantly answer all the questions Iruka posed to the class. During taijutsu, Spath blonde-haired boy made short work of every opponent, including Kiba Inuzuka, owner of one of the best taijutsu grades in the class, before surrendering against Sakura under the reasoning of being tired, a blatant lie. As Naruto kept answering all the questions and beating every opponent, he would constantly glare at Iruka and Mizuki, as if saying that he didn't need their help. Whilst both Mizuki, the most stuck-up student of the class, namely one Sasuke Uchiha, and by extension the rest of the class, thought Naruto was cheating, Iruka was pleasantly surprised. He always came out as a rigid teacher, but unlike the other academy instructors, he never despised Naruto because of the Kyuubi. He saw Naruto as a normal kid, like the rest of the village should. The only reason Iruka kept a stern, non-friendly facade was because he saw much of his younger self in Naruto, and therefore wanted to make sure that the boy didn't make the same mistakes as him. After class ended, Naruto was asked to stay and talk with Iruka. The teacher handed him a paper, with a math problem. Naruto, if you answer this problem right, I will never bother you during class again. Reading the problem, Naruto saw that it in fact was a hard question, but not an impossible one by any means. So after 15 minutes, Naruto handed Iruka the paper back with his answer. Iruka knew that Naruto was holding back in classes, a fact that went unnoticed by the rest of the academy staff and even the students, so he purposefully gave Naruto a genin graduation test question. Knowing that Naruto never paid attention to the classes, he knew he wouldn't suspect anything. As he saw the question, he knew that if Naruto wanted he could easily be top 3 in class, but he didn't wanted this because of something. Very good, Naruto, as the said boy then turned back and made his way towards the door. Iruka said something that definitively got his attention. What about going to Ichiraku's? My treat. Flashback end. After this, Naruto and Iruka became extremely close. Naruto never became top 3 in class, staying in the middle of the pack, but only because he didn't wanted it. Iruka managed to gain the boy trust and they became brothers in all but blood. Iruka learned about Naruto's rough start at the academy, and saw that the slacker Naruto only existed because said boy didn't wanted any of the instructors to claim that they helped him achieve anything. As Naruto's respect to Iruka grew, he even started paying attention to Iruka's lectures, leaving the sleeping to the other teachers' classes. Now Naruto, all you need to do to pass the exam is to perform a henge, a kawarimi and a bunshin. The boy nodded, before performing a kawarimi, substituting himself with a practice doll. Excellent, now a henge. Performing the seals, Naruto transformed himself into Anko Mitarashi, the snake mistress of Konoha, wearing a more revealing than the usual outfit if that was possible, basically an almost Anko, only with some extremely small pieces of fabric covering their most private areas. The effect was instant. Iruka went from a serious academy teacher to a pervert in 0.003 milliseconds, being propelled backwards by a giant nosebleed, before losing conscience upon hitting a wall. 15 minutes later Iruka regained consciousness. B Baka, what was that about? Ha, I always knew you were a closet pervert, this is my sexy no jutsu. What king of ninja does something like that? Iruka said, before bonking Naruto in the head. Someday this will defeat even the Hokage, Datbeo. Naruto replied, causing Iruka to sweat drop. Anyway, now you need to do a bunshin so you could pass. In the exterior Naruto was looking calm and collected but deep inside he was freaking out. The bunshin no jutsu was always his weakest technique because of his abnormal chakra pool. I need to do this, I can't fail Konohamaru and Ebisu hentai. Flashback start. After his payback at the academy teachers in an elaborate prank that consisted on having Anko Mitarashi to invite the before-mentioned teachers to a 4-way date with the Ice Queens of Konoha, paint, slingshot hits at very sensible places and horse-weight laxatives, Naruto was back into the Hokage office. Yo, wanted to see me Gigi? Yes, we need to talk what we are going to do about your studies. I've been thinking on firing them or at least giving them an ultimatum about their responsibilities as teachers. Should they don't comply with my orders first pan on firing them and stripping their shinobi ranks. Thanks Gigi, knowing you care for me like this means a lot to me, but, Naruto replied, adopting a more cautious tone, I don't think it'll work. Seeing the Sandame's questioning expression, the blonde continued. The teachers hate me, but they are good at what they do. All I need to prove myself is to know that they aren't sabotaging me. Also, if you fire them, it'll take some time to find replacements and it'll prejudice the rest of the students. 8 years old and already putting the others' needs before his own. I see. Then Hiruzen light up a grin he only displayed when he managed to outmaneuver Danzo, the elders and the civilians during council meeting. Then I have an idea. You'll have full access to the Sarutobi compound library, as well as the Hokage estate library. Use it to find reliable information concerning your studies. Naruto frowned a bit. Whilst he was the hard-working type of guy, he disliked reading, but he couldn't let his Hokage down. He was interrupted of his thoughts when he heard the slight tired, yet firm voice of the Hokage. But we still need to make up for your lost time in your skills training. Satoko, his secretary, please summon Ebisu here. Flashback end. Ebisu was a Tokubetsu Jonin specialized in training. He, like mostly of the village, despised Naruto, but being picked by the Hokage, he saw in this assignment the perfect opportunity to prove his worth to the Hokage. Naruto trained under him for 3 years. 2.5 of those years were purely focused on chakra control, which Ebisu defined as backbone of all good shinobi. With the half of the year left, Ebisu taught Naruto in basic nature transformation. Whilst Naruto was ecstatic that he possessed a wind nature affinity that favored him during combat, he was saddened by the fact that nobody in Konoha was able to use it, which made learning it impossible. Hiruzen informed that his son, Asuma, was a wind-type user, but he left 6 years ago to join the 12 guardian ninja of the daimyo of the Land of Fire and was yet to return to Konoha. Ebisu then decided to train Naruto in fire release nature transformation. Due to his affinity with fire being extremely higher, mainly because of the Kyuubi's chakra, and his now high chakra control, Naruto was able to learn 3C ranked Kaden Jutsu. Kaden, Enden Fire Release, Flame Bullet Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique, and Kaden, Hosenka no Jutsu Fire Release, Phoenix Sage Fire Technique. His skill level in Fire Release Jutsu was already at low Chunin level, when compared to Sasuke Uchiha, the last Uchiha, as the civilians said in awe, or the Emo Avenger, and Duck Butt Hair, as Naruto and Kiba referred to him. Naruto was at the same level, if not above him. Ebisu's hard work with Naruto also paid profit to the teacher, that was hired by Hiruzen as a tutor to his grandchild, Konohamaru. As a final gift, Ebisu gave Naruto a scroll with the Kaden, Karyuden Fire Release, Fire Dragon Bullet AB rank jutsu, that Naruto was yet to perfect, and declared that he was proud to be able to teach him. After these 3 years, Naruto's opinion of Ebisu highly changed, putting the teacher onto his precious people list. As he was taught by Ebisu and was constantly around the Hokage Tower, Naruto was able to befriend Konohamaru Sarutobi, the grandson of the Sandaime. Despite Konohamaru's bratish attitude, Naruto took a liking to the boy, considering him as a younger brother of sorts. Naruto was the first one to recognize Konohamaru as something other than the honorable grandson, and would during free time help Ebisu with his training. He also lectured the boy about the hard work needed to him become the Hokage, stating that there were no shortcuts to becoming Hokage. "Naruto, are you okay?" came the concerned voice of Iruka. "Yeah, why?" "Well, you were spacing out staring at the empty for 10 minutes. Sorry, was having a flashback moment." Naruto replied, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm still waiting for the bunshin." "Roger that." Clearing his mind, Naruto made the required hand signs, summoning 5 bunshins. Iruka looked at the clones before smiling to the boy. "Close your eyes." "Why? Just close it." "Okay." When he opened his eyes again, he found Iruka without his Hittite. Touching his own forehead, he felt the steel and the Konoha leaf symbol, before realizing. "Congratulations on graduating, Naruto. You're now a shinobi of Konohagakure no Sato." Tears welled up in Naruto's eyes as he remembered of all his struggles during his lifetime. Now he finally did it. "Thanks, Iruka-sensei." The duo was then interrupted when a purple-haired Anbu woman, wearing a cat mask, appeared before them. "Iruka Yumino, Naruto Uzumaki, your presence is requested by the Hokage." "Congratulations on graduating, Naruto. You truly deserved it," the Hokage said, with a hint of pride of his surrogate grandson achievement. "Thanks, Hokage-sama, it means a lot to me." During his 4 years of studies, Naruto was able to read a book or two about etiquette, realizing that his effective way to refer to the Hokage was somewhat disrespectful. He decided to use the proper honorifics while at public. He never stopped seeing the Hokage as a grandfather figure, but decided that he could change his attitude to be a bit more professional. Still, in private he always called him his Gigi. "Well, you're all business then. Now, do you have any idea why I called you here so promptly?" "No, but I assume it has something to do about me taking the graduation exams a day before the class." "Yes, in fact it has. As Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, I assign you a B rank mission." "B rank? Weren't those supposed to be taken only by Chunin or above?" "Not that I'm refusing the mission though. Quote, in fact, usually during peace only Chunin or above are allowed to complete B ranks, however this mission in particular requires you to undertake it. There were some reports of an enemy spy working inside the academy. I suspect about some few teachers, but I can't take any actions yet. Yesterday we've received a report that this spy is plotting to steal the scroll of seals, that contains Kinjutsu and was sealed by the Shodaime Hokage himself. We suspect that the spy will probably attempt to enlist the help of one of the students that failed the test. Considering your stealth prowess and background, we believe that if you somehow fail the exam, you'll be the prime option of the spy. So, I need to fail the exam, but I'm still a genin, right? Yes, the reason you graduated a day earlier in secrecy was that you could finally be assigned this mission. I assure you that even if you fail, you'll still be placed on a genin team. I don't plan on failing though. Naruto replied with a smirk. And I don't think you will. The Hokage said, also smirking. Naruto, even as a genin, was one of his most trusted shinobi. In fact, he planned on revealing the truth of his parentage as soon as Jiraiya set his foot on Konoha. So, what are my orders? You'll botch your own graduation test to be approached by the spy. After that, you'll use a decoy scroll and inform the Anbu about your meeting point. Like I said earlier, this is a B rank. Like I said earlier, considering there'll probably be a fight and you'll likely be targeted by the enemy. Thus you'll also will be required to assist the Anbu in the spy capture should they require, but I don't think they will. After that, come to my office, I'll give you a graduation present. Things were going as planned for Naruto. He decided to purposefully arrive 5 hours late to the exam. Somewhere a silver-haired cyclops, reading an orange smut book, sneezed. I have a feeling that finally someone decided to follow my way of life. This was of course planned, as he didn't want to raise any kind of suspicion amongst the graduates. He was approached by the spy, who turned out to be Mizuki, as planned. After retrieving the decoy scroll at the Hokage's office, he met with the Anbu assigned to the capture of Mizuki, the purple-haired girl with the cat mask of yesterday, who introduced herself as Neko. The plan was simple. After Naruto handed the scroll to Mizuki, Neko would neutralize him. Should she was unable to instantly restrain him, Naruto would act as support, not engaging Mizuki directly. Naruto was sitting at the rendezvous point, the clearing of a forest outside of Konoha, waiting for Mizuki. He made sure to observe all the surroundings, to be able to plan something should Neko's plan went wrong. After waiting for 5 minutes, Mizuki finally showed up. Standing atop of a tree branch, whilst Naruto sat at the ground, under another tree. Hey Mizuki-sensei, I got the scroll, can I get my headband now? Naruto asked, pretending to be enthusiastic. Sorry, but no, Mizuki said with an evil glare. Now, die, he said, throwing a Fuma shuriken towards Naruto. Naruto quickly rolled towards his right, avoiding the lethal strike, just in time to see Neko leaping from a higher branch, using her sword to strike down Mizuki, who barely managed to avoid a hit. You okay, kid? Neko asked. Yeah, now let's capture the Tem. No, I'll capture him, you'll stand down, I don't want to risk you by putting you head to head against a Chunin. If someone said that to Naruto 4 years ago, he would stubbornly refuse to stand down. However, after 4 years of studying and in his first mission as a genin, Naruto followed suit, hoping to accomplish the mission, impress his superior and hopefully get another B-ranked mission. While not engaging in combat, Naruto was observing the fight carefully, trying to get the most intel as possible on the enemy. It was clear that Neko was more skilled than Mizuki. She used her kenjutsu to put Mizuki on a defensive stance. Mizuki instead was adept at shuriken jutsu, as Naruto noted, due to the Fuma shuriken he carried attached to his back and the large number of regular shuriken he carried in his weapon pouch. Being a long-range fighter, he was constantly attempting to get distance with Neko. Naruto also noted that Fuma shuriken could also be used as a bladed weapon on his folded state. While not versatile enough, it provided a good defense against Neko's katana. Naruto hated Mizuki, but he must recognize his intelligence in the use of the Fuma shuriken, as it gave him the much-needed defense against short-range fighters like Neko. Mikazuki no Mai, Dance of the Crescent Moon. Neko leapt forward, creating afterimages of speed, thus making the impression that she was attacking Mizuki from above and both his sides. Mizuki used his folded Fuma shuriken to block the strike from above, and in a slicing motion, he managed to also block the strike from his left. Using his spare hand he managed to block the right strike. Using his blade to block two attacks from different directions at once, impressive. Naruto thought. He was brought out of his musings as Neko appeared in front of Mizuki, who now had his guard opened, in an impressive display of speed, thrusting her katana towards Mizuki's chest in a jabbing motion. As Naruto and Neko thought the fight was over, Mizuki, seconds before being hit, channeled chakra into a tiger tattoo on his chest, making it glow from under his Chunin vest. The next second, Mizuki's muscles underwent an impressive growth, ripping his shirt. The most bizarre thing is that he started growing a fur above his waist, becoming a hybrid of human and a tiger. The fur covered his entire torso, neck and face. Whilst maintaining his pale blue hair, he developed tiger ears. The unique areas that didn't spotted muscular growth were his legs. Neko managed to piece him with her katana, but the large muscle mass prevented any real damage and created resistance, making Neko unable to withdraw her sword from the enemy's chest. What the hell, was the collective thought of Naruto and Neko. Now I'm going to kill both of you. Mizuki yelled in an animalistic roar, drawing the sword from his chest and throwing it aside. From this point ahead the fight changed tides quickly. Mizuki became a close-range fighter and Neko, who couldn't retrieve her katana in time, went on the defensive, avoiding Mizuki's strikes. The game of cat and mouse lasted for about 5 minutes. Naruto stood sideways watching the fight development. It was clear that Neko wouldn't be able to handle the onslaught for much longer. As in a clue, Mizuki launched a punch as Neko leapt backwards in order to avoid the strike, but Mizuki used his other arm to land a hit on the anbu, on her left leg. Judging by the cracking sound, it was clear that Neko's leg was broken, effectively taking her out of the fight. Now Naruto had a choice. By observing Mizuki's behavior, it was clear that this transformation tired him. His reactions weren't sharp as they were in the beginning. Now he could retreat taking Neko, but risking a failed mission as Mizuki would have more than enough time to retreat. Or he could fight, hopefully lasting longer enough to get reinforcements, but risking both his and Neko's lives. Also failing his first mission, even if its AB rank would be bad for his record and could in the future get in his way when getting missions. Naruto shivered for a second thinking of the infamous D-rank missions he would have to complete to get in the Hokage's good graces again. Also allowing a spy to leave Konoha with extensive information would be, quoting Shikamaru, troublesome. As stated before, there were two choices: stay and fight, risking his partner life, or flee, saving Neko but giving the spy who possessed intel on the village to leave. Fortunately Naruto was known for thinking outside the box, and came with a third plan. Leaping onto action he fired a supercharged Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu, towards Mizuki, who, surprised by Naruto's prowess in the Kaden, stood dumbfounded, getting hit by the jutsu. His muscular frame and fur shielded him from any fatal damage, but it still hurts like hell. Roaring, he looked around and saw that both Naruto and Neko were gone. Naruto used the jutsu as distraction, so he could retrieve Neko. He rested her under the trunk of a tree, using the shadows in the forest to hide her. Then he made his way towards Mizuki, much to the Anbu agent protests. Mizuki was retreating towards the border with the rice country, where he was supposed to meet with his master. However, he stopped in his tracks when he heard the voice of the guy he hated the most. "Where do you think you're going, Naruto?" the traitor growled. Adopting a serious tone, Naruto glanced towards Mizuki, before speaking again. "Before we start, I'd to say a thing and then make you a question. I wanted to say that you're an amazing teacher, and I, as the Kyuubi, really shouldn't be allowed to learn alongside geniuses like Sasuke Uchiha. Still, under different circumstances, I'd be delighted to learn under you." Seeing Mizuki's amused expression, Naruto knew that if he couldn't make it as a ninja, he really should get a try on the acting career. Damn, I'm a good actor. I might even be able to star alongside Yukie Fujika's in one of those Princess Gale movies. Now for the question, Naruto said, adopting an even more serious tone. "The tiger is your father or your mother?" "What? Mizuki asked, taken back by the blonde's question. What I'm asking is, Naruto said, using hand gestures to emphasize his point. The forest was silent for 5 seconds, that you could even hear the breathing of the various beings that inhabited the forest as Mizuki looked towards Naruto. Obviously this silence was bound to end soon. I'll kill you, demon brat. I'll gut you alive, Mizuki said, leaping towards Naruto, starting the hunt. Naruto, due to his background as a prankster and his training under Ebisu, was able to escape Mizuki with relative ease. For the next 30 minutes, using stealth, his fire jutsu and some weapons alongside some explosive tags and flashbangs, Naruto outmaneuvered Mizuki, hopefully buying Neko's time to escape and tiring Mizuki out. As he dashed between the trees, he noticed a shiny object on the ground, Neko's katana. Why not? He asked himself, picking up the sword from the ground. The katana was single-edged, and had a red and brown hilt, with some golden yellow details on the handle. 5 minutes later, he faced a panting Mizuki in a clearing nearby where he left Neko. Even my strongest fire jutsu wasn't able to cause him any damage because of his fur and muscles. However, if things were going as planned, reinforcements should be coming soon. Still, I need to fight him right now so he wouldn't suspect anything. It's a good thing I picked that katana up. Naruto formulated a strategy that consisted on dodging Mizuki's strikes whilst using the katana to prevent him from getting much closer. After reevaluating his opponent, Naruto decided it was safe to adopt a more offensive instance. Whilst never receiving any kind of training in kenjutsu, Naruto was a kinesthetic learner, and during his brief spar with Mizuki, he was able to learn the basics of the katana. The fact that he was genuinely interested in learning kenjutsu in the future was another plus. Unknown to him, Neko didn't retreated. She refused to leave a genin alone to fight a chunin. Unfortunately, Mizuki's punch broke her calf, so she was in no condition of fighting, but should Naruto fall, she would be able to hold him long enough for him to retreat. She looked at the blonde boy holding her katana and frowned. Academy students weren't taught kenjutsu in Konoha as opposed to villages like Kiri and Kumo, so obviously the boy shouldn't be able to wield the sword properly. Noticing his grip, she realized that the boy didn't use the Konoha kenjutsu stance, but he appeared to be comfortable enough. As the fight progressed, she was pleased to see that Naruto wasn't the hot-headed idiot type who leapt forwards without thinking. He properly took his time, and used the katana as a defensive weapon to prevent the enemy to close distance. Interesting use of an offensive weapon to create defense. The boy is intelligent. Neko frowned as she saw the boy adopting a more offensive instance, and hoped he wasn't getting overconfident. During the next 5 minutes, Neko's already growing opinion of the boy increased even more, as he was able to keep attacking, tiring the opponent out and not allowing him any kind of chance to counterattack. Naruto kept attacking and tiring out Mizuki. He even managed to get a few cuts on his legs and torso, but mostly importantly, he stalled the enemy. Why he did that? To get reinforcements, of course. How he knew there were reinforcements coming? It was his plan all along. As he dodged another furious strike of Mizuki, who was on his last legs, he felt 2 chakra signatures approaching. Whilst not receiving training in censoring, Naruto had a natural talent for this particular ability. When younger, he sensed people by his QB improved hearing. Nowadays he was able to sense chakra signatures meditating, but being focused on the fight, he still was able to sense someone coming, but he didn't know their strength. The reinforcements were in fact Anbu, who using a restraining technique quickly subdued Mizuki, getting him unconscious. At the same time, Neko appeared. She was there all this time. I really need to pick up my sensing abilities. Her Anbu mask prevented her from showing any emotions, but if Naruto could guess, he would say it was anger, as he expressly refused to follow one of her direct orders, engaging the enemy. The mission was successful, but he refused to follow orders anyway. He just hoped he could still get at least C-ranked missions after that. You refused to follow my orders. Yes, I did. I'm sorry about that, but we couldn't allow the spy to flee with important information on our village. Still, You didn't follow my orders. Neko-san, I'm sorry, I made a decision on the spot thinking on the best of the village whilst trying to prevent any unnecessary causalities. Still, I know I broke the rules and I know there'll be consequences. No, there won't be any consequences. Neko said coldly, flaring killing intent, and Naruto somehow felt his shinobi career was in danger. However, suddenly the key vanished, and judging by Neko's body language, she was happy. I also made several mistakes on this mission. I presumed you were just a bratty academy student and never bothered to learn about your techniques, thus being unable on developing any good strategy should the enemy resist. I over-relied on my kenjutsu, which made an opening that allowed the opponent to attack me, jeopardizing the mission. Also, I never really scouted the area, assuming it would be a simple snack and grab mission, unlike you who used the environment in your favor. If someone should be apologizing, it would be me. So I'm not in trouble. In contrary, I believe the Hokage will be pleasantly surprised with your performance today. Noticing that he still held the katana on his right hand, he bowed and offered the katana to Neko, holding the hilt and the edge of the sword with open hands. Naruto remembered that katana were usually wielded by samurai, and he read that this was the manner they handled their weapons. I believe this is yours, Neko-san. Taken back by the young boy knowledge of the Bushido, she bowed, accepting her sword. You've put quite a display fighting Mizuki. I didn't knew that the academy started teaching kenjutsu again, even though I don't recognize this style as being the Konoha kenjutsu. It's because it wasn't. The academy doesn't offer any kenjutsu training. I tried to wield the katana with the best of my abilities even though I never received any formal education in kenjutsu. I just hope my display wasn't an eyesore for a practiced kenjutsu user like you. Wait, you're saying you never properly trained kenjutsu? How is that possible? I'm what people call a kinesthetic learner. It came to me pretty easily actually. Naruto said, shrugging. But I believe that my interest in kenjutsu helped me as well. Neko was dumbfounded. This kid could put up a fight, wielding a weapon he didn't had any familiarity with, and was able to create his own style, even with some noticeable flaws. In 35 minutes. I have to tell Hayate-kun about this kid. He was looking for an apprentice for years. Naruto-san, came the voice of one of the other Anbu operatives, who wore an ox mask. The Hokage requested your presence in his office ASAP. Go. We'll take care of Neko-senpai and the traitor. Hiruzen was slightly preoccupied. He was able to use the crystal ball to see the mission progress, and promptly sent Anbu to help Naruto and Neko during the mission. Mizuki had this strange transformation that he suspected it was work of Orochimaru. If that was indeed true, it meant that things would get even more complicated. However, what concerned the most was that he wasn't able to witness the rest of the fight. The Tomegan no Jutsu telescope technique had a time limit that ticked down just as Naruto questioned the paternity of Mizuki. His fears, however, were put to the ground as the door to his office opened, revealing Naruto. Mission accomplished, Hokage-sama. A lone figure reached the gates of Konoha after 7 years. 7 years ago he made a life-changing decision, leaving his home. For 7 years he questioned his decision, thinking of what could have been. In 7 years he attained glory and became a proven shinobi, but deep inside he felt empty, because in leaving he hurt the person who he loved most in the world. She still remembered him. She hated him for what he did. She was dating someone. Yes and no. His, informant, kept him updated. The tall man wore a black coat, with brown details, with black pants and clack shinobi boots. He carried himself with an air of confidence, but deep in his eyes you could see regret. A cloak covered his head, making his features unrecognized. Upon reaching the gate he glanced at the two figures performing duty, Katetsu Hagane and Izumo Kamizuki, the eternal chunins of the guard duty. He waved to them, before removing his cloak, making his face visible. Izumo and Katetsu were in another boring day at guard duty. Their day, however, became more eventful as they noticed the approaching figure removing his cloak. It is really him. It has been a long time since he left. It is he. Things will become a lot more interesting from now on. So, you decided that it was a good idea to engage a Chunin-level shinobi, who managed to defeat one of my best Anbu operatives just one day after you graduated from the academy. Yup. Even when this Chunin probably used a kinjutsu to enhance his physical abilities. Yup. Damn it, Naruto, could you please stop replying every question I have with a, yup. Yup. Wait, no. This isn't a joke. Have things played differently and the Anbu haven't arrived at time you could have died. Hiruzen ranted, in the verge of yelling. Well, I knew they would be coming. Naruto replied with a grin. Stop messing around, I'm being serious. So am I. Seeing the Hokage's doubts about his previous statement, Naruto elaborated, remember when I fired the first fireball to distract Mizuki and save Neiko? Getting a nod from the Hokage, the genin continued, I supercharged that attack with half of my chakra, so the Anbu stationed in the village perimeter could easily sense the attack and head towards our direction. I never planned on taking Mizuki down, I just kept stalling him to give the Anbu enough time to reach the scene. Hiruzen was dumbfounded, Naruto having just left the academy already developed a Chunin-like line of though. However, he wasn't totally convinced yet. You knew the scroll was a decoy one, so why risk getting into a fight? Perhaps you were trying to show service to get more high-ranked missions. I'll be honest and say that in fact this went through my mind, however it was far from being the reason I enacted a new plan instead of withdrawing and risking losing Mizuki. Using his hand to enumerate his points, he continued, reason number 1, letting a spy flee the village is always bad for the image of the village, and could in the future translate into more hostile spy actions. Reason number 2, Mizuki was the academy teacher of a class full of clan heirs, including the famed Hyuga and the Uchiha clans. Considering our village relies a lot on its clans, I assumed that by stopping him I could prevent sensitive information from getting into the hands of the enemies. Third reason, since he was captured alive, the T&I department can get information of his reasonings and hopefully his employer. Fourth reason, I hate Mizuki. Hiruzen now had to fight the urge to promote Naruto to Chunin at the spot. The kid embodied the will of fire, putting the village security and his comrades ahead of his own life. He was still reckless, but this kind of attitude demanded encouragement, not reprimands. Well, I'm speechless. Not only you completed a mission that turned out to be AA rank since it concerned secretive village affairs, but also managed to analyze the scenario you were in, decide the best plan of action and develop, and perform, a successful strategy at the spot. Thanks Hokage-sama. Being praised by you means a lot to me. No need to formalities now, we're alone. Picking an envelope on his drawer and handling it to Naruto, he continued his speech. This is the reward for your first mission. Like I stated earlier, due to the capture of an enemy and the facts I mentioned before, it turned out to be AA rank. Opening the envelope, Naruto's heart skipped a bit. 150,000 ryo. AN. I am using the conversion rate that $1 is equivalent to 10 ryo, so Naruto received about $15,000 for this mission. Seeing the genin eyes shine with the amount of money, Hiruzen chuckled. Don't go spending all your money on ramen. Also, remember to go to the academy next week for the genin team's assignments. Until then you're dismissed. As soon as Naruto left his office, Hiruzen reached for his hidden drawer, where his faithful companion in the battle against the paperwork rested. Time for some reading, the Sandaime said to himself, giggling perversely. His quality time was quickly interrupted when a Anbu appeared in the room. Hokage-sama, Asuma Sarutobi has returned to the village. What Hiruzen though would be a quiet uneventful night, quickly snowballed, into a sleepless night for the aged Hokage. First Naruto managed to complete his A rank, capturing a spy that could be working for Orochimaru. Then his son, Asuma, came back to Konoha and is requesting an audience with him about being reintegrated into the shinobi program. Also he had to create the genin teams of a graduating class full of clan heirs, what was never an easy task, considering both the civilian and the shinobi councils tended to butt in, the latter one being in a most considerate, less demanding manner. Finally Neiko, one of his most trusted Anbu, asked to a private audience with him alongside her boyfriend, Hayate. Why? He had no idea. But before worrying about Neko, he had to meet his son. Asuma and Hiruzen never really agreed about anything. Hiruzen knew that his younger son never wanted to be seen just as the Hokage's son. Hiruzen's wife, Bawako, was the peacemaker. Both men were extremely strong, but they were smart enough to learn to never get on the bad side of a woman. When Bawako passed out, their relationship deteriorated badly. Asuma felt alone and Hiruzen buried himself into his work as Hokage. Finally, on a fateful day 7 years ago, Asuma had a serious discussion with his then-girlfriend, Kurenai Yuhi, and they ended breaking up. Alone, Asuma decided that he needed a change of air and decided to accept the daimyo offer to join the 12 Guardian Ninja. During those 7 years they only exchanged letter thrice. When Konohamaru was born, when Asuma attained a bounty of 35 million ryo and Hiruzen wrote to him, counseling some security measures, and finally when he decided that Kurenai should be promoted to Jonin and asked Asuma, in condition on being her ex-teammate. But now father and son stood in front of each other after all these years. Hiruzen noted that gone was the teen that left years ago, now he was a man. Asuma was still relatively young, 27 years old, but carried himself with the air of a veteran. The Sandame's son was noticeably stronger than he left. One thing that remained the same was his smoking habits. Usually parents tended to discourage those kinds of habits, but being a shinobi meant your life would be online each and every time, so dying at his mid-40s was already better than dying in his mid-20s, like Minato and Tobirama, two of the strongest shinobi Konoha had to offer and that died nevertheless. So, you're back. Yes I am, father. Both men spoke in neutral, bearing emotionless tones, but even when they were on speaking terms they behaved like this. Asuma, unlike his elder brother and his nephew, never was the kind of people to let himself be overtaken by feelings. So sitting on an office, making small talk or playing shogi, was the way they had to connect. How was the capital? The father-son duo proceeded to make small talk for 30 minutes, with Hiruzen being careful to not mention Kurenai or children in any moment of the conversation. However, this meeting was bound to change pace quickly, when Asuma noticed the stack of academy papers in his desk. You're building the teams, aren't those supposed to be built automatically? Usually yes, but this year has been particularly different. This graduating class has the heirs to the Akamichi, Aburame, Nara, Hyuga, Inuzuka and Yamanaka clans, a promising girl from the Haruno civilian clan, the last of the Uchiha, and finally Naruto Uzumaki. That's why I don't want your job. Asuma said, chuckling. Humph, this isn't even the worst part. The civilian council kept bothering me about assigning the Uchiha to a one-man squad, so others wouldn't hinder his growth. The Shinobi Council keeps asking me about the sensei, and the Jonin themselves keep asking for certain additions to their teams. Who are the Jonin anyway? Shit. Well, you see, Kakashi, and, she. Asuma asked, narrowing his eyes. Kurenai. Asuma asked, interrupting his stuttering father. Yes. Asuma just smiled. She's on the path of a fine kunoichi. Yes. She's one of our best, the Genjutsu mistress of Konoha. Hiruzen said, causing Asuma to smile even more. Returning to the team assignments topic, what were the requests? The civilian council alongside the elders wanted to Sasuke Uchiha to be placed on an individual team under Kakashi. I promptly refused the one-man cell idea, but I'm assigning him to Kakashi considering Kakashi himself asked for him. The Shinobi Council is worried about the Jonin instructors getting on the way of their children's training, the Hyuga mainly. Kurenai decided to ask for an all-kunoichi team, so she could beat the fangirl out of the Yamanaka and the Haruno whilst helping the Hyuga to develop confidence. Kakashi asked for both Sasuke and Naruto, whilst Danzo requests him to be trained as a weapon and the civilian council requests his execution. Though break, do you have any team ready yet? Only the Ino Shika Cho. I already have Sasuke under Team Kakashi, but I don't want Naruto on his team. Why? Just because he's a Jinchuriki. No, because right now he's the best genin I've had since Itachi Uchiha. Sarutobi explained, causing Asuma's eyes to widen. If he's put on a team with the Uchiha, he'll probably beat Sasuke, what will cause some problems ahead pertaining the council. Also, the council will pretty much demand Kakashi to focus on the Uchiha, and even if that wasn't the case, Kakashi isn't the best suited teacher for Naruto. Why is that? Because Naruto uses wind affinity, the single one Kakashi wasn't able to master. A wind user. Like me. In Konoha. How is that possible? Asuma suddenly became a lot more interested in this year's class. How do you think affinities are gained? Usually genetically, but besides me there was no other wind user other than the Yond. The Asuma eyes widened, he looked at his father, who just nodded, then he looked onto the Yondaime portrait that was hung in the wall and cursed his stupidity for not realizing before. Well, I guess that explains why Kakashi wanted him. Yes, but I know Kakashi isn't the best teacher for him. If I assigned him to Team Kakashi, I fear we'll be losing a Kage level prospect to get a Jonin level 1. Is he that good? Yes, today he completed his first mission, an A-ranked mission. He mainly uses fire release because of the lack of a wind release teacher in Konoha. He already has Jonin level chakra reserves, has Chunin level ninjutsu, and above average taijutsu, and compensates his lack of talent in genjutsu through complex, yet effective strategies. His IQ is estimated in about 150, that whilst not Nara high, is high nonetheless. The most impressive thing is his mindset, he always thinks of what is the best for the village and is able to analyze the development of a fight on the run. Besides that, he developed chakra sensing abilities. So, basically a hybrid of me, Kakashi, Shikaku Nara and Inoichi Yamanaka with an almost endless chakra pool. Getting a nod from his father, he just shrugged, well, count me in. I heard that the Jonin that trains the future Kage of Konoha usually gets some good reputation. Asuma, the Sandaime said before grinning, this is perfect, with you as a sensei I can balance the squads. Thank you, son. No problem, dad, Asuma said smiling. But I must inform you that Yugao Azuki, one of Kurenai's best friends, is coming here right now, so I strongly advise you to flee if you don't want Kurenai to know you're back. Asuma's cool facade quickly changed into a terrified one. Yeah, that's my clue, see you later, dad. Asuma said, jumping from the window. I don't know why, but my son reminded me of a certain someone. Somewhere in a hot spring in the land of the hot water, a toad sage doing his research, sneezed, revealing his position, and ended up being beaten up by a horde of angry females. Naruto woke up with a sound of a knock on his door. Walking around his small apartment, he quickly changed into a plain black t-shirt and a white cargo short combo, which he wore during the last 4 years at the academy. Looking at his Hitai, he became undecided whether he should wear it as a headband or as an armband. Thinking his hair usually tended to fall on his forehead, he decided to go for the headband. Opening the door, he saw an tiger masked Anbu male, wearing full Anbu apparel. Hokage-sama asked you to go to his office, right now, the Anbu said, before disappearing in a shunshin. Gotta learn how to do that. After walking to the Hokage tower, he entered the office, where he was received by the Hokage and 2 other persons, a purple-haired girl with straight waist-length hair with brown eyes and pale face, and a man with a tired aspect, evidenced by the bags under his eyes, with fair skin and short brown hair. The couple wore standard Konoha flak jacket, the uniform for Chunin rank or above shinobi. The noticeable fact is that the 2 of them had katanas, a rare sight in Konoha, where kenjutsu wasn't taught, unlike other villages like Kumo, Kiri and even Iwa by lesser extent. Hello, Hokage-sama, Neko-san, Neko's boyfriend-san. Wait, how do you know who I was? I never showed my face, and how do you know that Hayate-kun was my boyfriend? Answering your first question, the katana you have strapped on your back is similar to the one you used yesterday, the handle seemed custom-made, what eliminates the possibility of it being mass-produced, and I kinda sensed your chakra signature. Wow, I didn't know you were a censor too, but how did you discover that Hayate-kun was my boyfriend? You were holding hands. Quickly detaching their hands, the couple looked to the Hokage that was clearing his throat. Naruto, I called you here for two reasons. The first one is that I forgot to give you your graduation process, the Sandaime said, taking a scroll from a drawer and handling it to Naruto. This scroll contains the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, a jutsu that was into the scroll that Mizuki intended to steal. This jutsu is labeled as a kinjutsu due to the high chakra usage, but considering your abnormal chakra reserves, I don't think you'll have any problems in using it effectively. Here is an explained. Now, for the second topic. Naruto, those behind you are Yugao Azuki, whom you met as a Neko during last night, and her boyfriend, Hayate Gecko, the best swordsman of Konoha. It came to Yugao's attention that you were quite skilled in kenjutsu even though you haven't received any formal instruction in that matter. Therefore, they are offering to teach you in the Konoha Ryu Kenjutsu. What do you think? For real? He said, turning to the couple, who smiled and nodded to him. I'd love to. Hokage-sama informed us that you were given a 1-week rest until you're assigned to your genin team, so I'd like to teach you during the afternoons of this week. After that, I'll assign a training program that will make you able to train alone. After 2 months you'll have a spar with me and Yugao-chan here. Hayate explained. Now let's get to work. Yugao completed. 2 days before the genin team assignment. After another hellish training session under Yugao and Hayate, Naruto was making his way home. His kenjutsu improved greatly during training, but still was a work in progress. Yugao also was considerate enough to give Naruto some pointers in the usage of his sensory skills, but they were nowhere near effective, as Naruto could only sense signatures in a 500 meters radius and could only distinguish those signatures into a 100 meters radius. Considering even genin were able to cut this 500 meters in less than 1 minute, and he could only sense their chakra in less than 10 seconds before the attack, it would leave him defenseless, as he would only have this tiny time window to evaluate the opponent chakra and decide he would be able to fight back or retreat. The couple decided to give Naruto tomorrow as a day off, so he could rest for the big day. Naruto then decided to visit Ichiraku's to grab some ramen. He was too tired to even think of making his own meal. After he learned about the Kyuubi and decided to put more effort in becoming a shinobi, Naruto, after some persuasion from Ebisu and the Hokage, decided to cut off ramen, adopting a more balanced diet. However, ramen was still his personal favorite and he stopped by at the Ichiraku's at least once a week. After ordering 2 servings of miso ramen and another 2 of pork ramen, Naruto noticed that Ayame, who was serving him since Tsuki already went home, was somewhat different. Hey Ayame Nichan, something troubling you? Naruto asked, honestly concerned. No, everything's fine, Ayame responded, faking a smile. She could at least put some effort onto lying then. Ayame, I consider you as my sister, to me you are family, so please tell me what's wrong. I may be able to help. Sorry Naruto, this is my problem, I don't want to bug you. Ayame, whenever I had a bad day at the academy you were there to cheer me up, even if I can't help you it'll be good to let it off. Okay, remember that I started going to cooking school to become a nutritionist. As Naruto nodded, expressing his attention, the girl continued, well, we've been having some difficult months here, and not only I'll not be able to continue studying but father might even close the restaurant. Okay, how much money do you need? Naruto, I'm talking about serious money here, you won't be able to afford to help, I appreciate your intentions but it's time to let go. Ayame please, how much do you need to help the restaurant and complete your studies? 25,000 ryo to school, 50,000 ryo to restaurant, total, 75,000 ryo. Ayame replied, sighing. No problem, I can afford that. Naruto replied nonchalantly, causing Ayame's eyes to jump of their sockets. How did you get so much money? Please tell me you aren't selling drugs. What? No, I'm a shinobi. Naruto said proudly pointing to his headband. I completed a mission and received 150,000 ryo. I don't mind paying to help you. Still, you need to talk to dad before we accept. Okay. About your studies, I can give you the money as a gift. I only want two things from you. Naruto, no matter how much you pay, I won't have with you. Ayame said, narrowing her eyes. Whaat. Naruto said, blushing. You asked me to do two things for you, probably, or a blowjob. The brunette replied, causing Naruto's blush to achieve a blood-red tone, and a small nosebleed to appear. No, I never said that. Why everyone in Konoha is a pervert? Heck, you're like my older sister, geez. Usually when a man offers money to a girl, asking for a favor, he usually means. Ayame replied. Well, I'm not like most men. So you're one of those happy guys? Ayame interrupted Naruto. As the genin failed to understand the meaning of her words, she continued, you know, a man who likes other men. No, you're confounding me with Sasuke Tem, I'm straight. Deciding to finish business before Ayame mentioned again, he continued. The two things I wanted to ask you are for you to help me with a diet for free and to go shopping with me tomorrow. Shopping, Ayame said, her eyes suddenly twinkling. Yes, I decided to change my style now that I'm a shinobi. I figured out I could use a girl opinion. Well, Naruto Uzumaki, you got yourself a deal. The assignment day. Naruto woke up late. Why? He learned in the hard way that when you get into a situation where girl and shopping exist in the same sentence, you must leave everything behind and run. Run like your life depended on it. Run like Orochimaru wanted to become buddies with you. Run like an Uchiha when you see Tobirama. Run like an Iwa shinobi when you see the yellow flash. Run like a Nara when you see work. Just kidding, Naras don't run, it's too troublesome. Well, you get the point. Naruto spent 12 hours with Ayame. What started to simple get together and go to Higarashi's weapons turned out to be a visit to the hairdresser, then a visit to several female clothing stores, then a visit to the Ichiraku's house to discuss how Naruto could help old man Tuki, and finally an expensive dinner at one of those overpriced restaurants. Should have asked Yugao-san for help instead. 12 hours later and 110,000 ryo short, Naruto couldn't help but feel drained. He was happy to reach an agreement with old man Tuki. He ended up buying 25% of the ramen stand with his 100,000 ryo, effectively making him a co-owner of the place. The other 10,000 ryo were used buying clothes, weapons, getting a new haircut, buying Ayame a dress. He was still trying to figure out how she convinced him to do that. Must have been the puppy eyes no jutsu, and paying for dinner. Naruto was happy with his choice of clothes. They were somewhat cool, but still durable and light, so he could move freely. He also replenished his weapon stock and placed an order for a custom-made katana that would be ready in a month's time. Naruto considered his haircut somewhat cooler than his previous one, but still was practical, the main reason he opted to modify his hairstyle. Naruto now wore black shinobi sandals, with metal toe caps so his toes weren't exposed to attacks from projectiles like Senbon or arrows. The sandal itself was made of a more resistant type of rubber than the one used in the standard issue, providing more durability. He wore black Anbu pants, which tightened around his calves but still were loose enough for him to move without losing any speed or momentum. On his right tight, a modified kunai holster to also hold shuriken was strapped with white bands. Naruto opted for this modified version so he could quick draw shuriken as well, even though there wouldn't be too many available. Since he never really was a fan of shuriken jutsu, he decided to go for effectiveness instead of sheer number. He wore a black simple jacket, which he maintained closed, with a single orange strip running from each shoulder to the end of the sleeves. He also emboldened the Uzumaki clan insignia on the back of his shirt. Even being a full-sleeve jacket, Naruto wore it with half-folded sleeve running until his mid-forearm. He decided to not buy an armor of kinds since he usually preferred to engage the opponent's mid-range and his taijutsu instances were heavily biased towards evasion, so speed was chosen in detriment of armoring. Underneath the jacket, Naruto wore a mesh t-shirt, chosen to give some extra protection. Naruto's new hairstyle was a slightly shorter variation of his previous one, which he wore as a side-swept haircut. He decided for this option since the Ayame, and even himself by a lesser extent considered to be kind of ugly. By side-seeping it he could prevent his bangs from falling onto his eyes, even if somehow he lost his headband. Finally Naruto resolved his Hitai-8 dilemma by wearing it as a headband. This choice was that wearing it as a headband instead of a armband not only he could get a protection in his forehead but also his arm's movement wouldn't be slightly restrained by the armband form. He changed the clothing from blue to black, to be more undetectable at night. Quite happy with his new look, Naruto made his way towards the classroom, hoping to not be late. Upon entering the classroom, he realized that he wasn't late, but his new wardrobe attracted some people's attention. Choji Akamichi, Shikamaru Nara and Kiba Inuzuka, his closest friends, looked at him quizzically before stopping as Naruto gave them a "we'll talk later" look. Sasuke Uchiha quickly glanced towards him, probably expecting to see Iruka. After he realized that it was just Naruto, he went back to brood in his own world. However, Sasuke's action wasn't unnoticed by his closest two fangirls, Sakura Haruno and Ino Yamanaka. Both girls turned out to see the new Naruto and both lightly blushed. "Okami, Naruto looks hot." The blonde fangirl though. "Is that Naruto? He's handsome." "No, perish this blasphemous thoughts. I like Sasuke, not Naruto. The pinkett though. Cha, what a glorious piece of meat." Inner Sakura added. Finally, on the corner of the room, Hinata Hyuga was trying her hardest to not faint, but as Naruto made eye contact with her, those efforts went to waste, as she passed out. Naruto wanted to seat near his friends, however there was just one available seat, on the end of the class. Making his way towards the seat, Naruto was thankful that he went shopping. Judging by the blushes of the girls in his class, it seemed that his new wardrobe caused quite the impression. Taking his seat, Naruto realized that he could see the entire class from his spot. Choji, Kiba and Shikamaru were sitting together. The first one was eating, as usual, the second one was playing with Akamaru, as usual, and finally the last one was sleeping. Yep, nothing new as far he was concerned. Those three were his only friends with his age. Naruto and the trio became closer because of their lack of interest in classes. Each one had different reasons. Naruto himself wanted to make clear that he didn't needed the teacher's help and that everything he achieved on his own, the only exception going to Iruka's classes. Choji wasn't motivated, like his best buddy, Shikamaru, and spent most of the class eating. Kiba disliked indoor classes and tended to skip a lot of classes to play outside with Akamaru. Shikamaru had zero motivation, but over 200 in IQ, so he would take constant naps, play shogi instead of paying attention to the lectures, but still had no problems in the tests. Actually, Naruto was pretty sure that if Shikamaru wanted, he could easily become the Rookie of the Year, but quoting Shikamaru himself, it was too much troublesome. Naruto's closest friend was Shikamaru. They would slack off together, and sometimes play shogi, with Shikamaru actually having to make an effort to win. After befriending Shikamaru, Choji came next. The boy was nice and a loyal friend and naturally became Naruto's friend. Naruto's relationship with Kiba was a bit more complex. At the start, Kiba didn't see eye to eye with him, mainly because that when Naruto stopped being sabotaged by the teachers, he quickly surpassed him, making Kiba the dead last in class. However, they would constantly skip class, and occasionally pull pranks. Kiba stopped resenting Naruto for surpassing him and decided that his grades were his own fault. Naruto even helped Kiba with school work once or twice. Due to their kinship with the dogs, the Inuzuka clan was considered one of the most loyal clans on Konoha, and Naruto was happy to have such a loyal friend. On his right corner sat Shino Aburame, who was just Shino. He was the good kind of stoic. He treated well those who treated him well and never bothered anyone. But due to his reclusive nature, a shared trait amongst his clansmen, he never really talked with Naruto on a personal level. Naruto's attention quickly changed to the still passed out Hinata Hyuga, the heiress to the Hyuga, the strongest clan in Konoha. The Hyuga were the traditionalist kind of clan, their division in main and branch houses being one of those so-called traditions. Hinata was unlike the rest of the Hyuga, which meant she didn't acted like actually she was kind and caring with everybody. Hinata's biggest weakness was his lack of confidence, that made her look weak to her clan, that began to criticize her and therefore making her more unconfident. Naruto, after being forcibly retired by the class, decided to learn by studying the Ika Ika book series. If that was his most brilliant or his stupidest idea, Naruto wasn't yet sure, but the fact is that by judging by her actions towards him, Naruto came to the obvious conclusion that Hinata had a big crush on him. Naruto was first overjoyed when he learned that a girl liked him that way, but after researching about the Hyuga, he saw that there were no prospects of a future relationship between him and Hinata. The Hyuga clan practiced some mild inbreeding to keep their bloodline clean, and there were some few documented cases of women being married off to another clans, much less this woman being the heir. Even though the prospects of a future relationship between Naruto and Hinata being almost inexistent, Naruto really cared about the heiress and hoped to help her with her confidence issues. Next was Ino Yamanaka, one of the prettiest girls in the class, one of the prettiest girls in Konoha. Naruto had a huge crush on her, but combining his newfound dedication towards shinobi training and Ino being one of Sasuke's most avid fangirls made him forcibly end his one-sided crush. Unlike most of the girls in class, Ino came from a shinobi clan, actually being heir to the Yamanaka. Due to that, she didn't openly despise Naruto like the girls from civilian origins. They weren't friends, but due to Naruto's closeness to Choji and Shikamaru, they were on speaking terms. The only thing Naruto disliked about Ino was her fangirl attitude about Sasuke, that in his opinion hindered her growth. Deeply inside, Naruto, despite his neutral attitude towards the blonde, cared a lot about her. Romantically speaking, Naruto still had a bit of a crush on her, but he hid extremely well. Despite all those qualities, the girl who Naruto had his biggest crush wasn't Ino, actually it was her rival friend. Sakura Haruno was Naruto's first crush, actually Naruto's first love. Unfortunately, it was totally one-sided, and Naruto never felt the right moment to make a move on her. After undergoing a change of personality 4 years ago, Naruto hoped that his crush on Sakura would end. Boy, he was wrong. Before seeing the world with his newfound wisdom, Naruto liked Sakura because she was pretty, she had a lovely pink hair and a cute forehead. The new Naruto saw a girl that was extremely talented, with a masterful chakra control and that managed to be the top kunoichi in class, in front of 2 clan heiresses despite her civilian handicap. Now Naruto was truly in love. But he knew better. She liked Sasuke, her crush on the emo being even bigger than Ino's. She was a civilian, her parents probably hating him. So Naruto decided to do what he did best, mask his feelings. During 4 years, Naruto never spoke a single word to Sakura, hoping to someday finally stopping loving her. He felt that his love turned back into attraction, but deep inside it was still there. Finally, Sasuke Uchiha, aka Duck Butt Hair, aka the Emo Avenger, aka Sasuke. The last Uchiha. If all the Uchihas acted like Sasuke, Naruto would pat Itachi on the back for getting rid of them. Sasuke had a superiority and an inferiority complex at the same time. He looked down at all of those who he deemed as weaker than him, but at the same time he refused to acknowledge anyone who was stronger than him as an equal. Naruto could never imagine what would be like having his entire clan wiped out by his brother, being the lone survivor. Naruto could understand the pain and the suffering from losing those close to him. What Naruto couldn't understand and would never accept that beside always being praised, noticed and sometimes even favored, the guy would continue living on his own world. Sasuke never knew what was like being forcibly alone, having no one to acknowledge you, and thus decided to just act high and might and ignore people who genuinely cared about him, like Ino and Sakura. That being set aside, Naruto respected the shinobi Sasuke, who could probably give Chunins a run for their money. Naruto's thoughts were interrupted by Iruka's appearance. After long 30 minutes of speech, where Naruto decided to pull off a Shikamaru, sleeping off the speech. He woke up only to hear. Team 7. Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, Kiba Inuzuka. Team Sensei is Kakashi Hatake. In the background, Naruto could hear Kiba's complaints about being placed on the same team as the Uchiha and Sakura's cries of happiness, much to Ino's dismay. Team 8. Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamichi, Ino Yamanaka. Team Sensei is Kurenai Yuhi. Naruto could hear more of Ino complaining about being in a team full of slackers. Team 9 is still active, so we jump to Team 10, Naruto Uzumaki, Shino Aburame, Hinata Hyuga. Team Sensei is Asuma Sarutobi. At this moment, Hinata, who just had woken up, passed out again after being put on a team with Naruto. You must wait for the teachers on the classroom, Iruka said before leaving the room. Naruto spent the next 10 minutes talking to Kiba, as Ino forcibly dragged Choji and Shikamaru to put up some ground rules. He wanted to talk with his teammates, but Hinata was still passed out and Shino didn't seem eager to any kind of social interaction. Finally, the door opened, revealing a tall, olive-skinned man. He was smoking a cigarette, had a beard and a spiky black hair. His outfit was the standard Konoha attire, with addition of a sash with the fire kanji on his waist. Team 10. My name is Asuma Sarutobi and I'll be your sensei. The newly formed Team 10 was walking alongside his new sensei. Each Jonin had the right to choose his team meeting point. Asuma opted to have the team first meeting at his favorite restaurant, Yakiniku Q, a Korean barbecue restaurant. The walk was uneventful. Shino didn't felt the need to talk about anything. Asuma was silently studying his team, and Naruto was busy carrying the still passed out Hinata. As they finally reached the restaurant, Hinata finally woke up, this time Naruto making sure to not make eye contact with her so she wouldn't faint again. The team was eagerly welcomed by the owners, who Naruto and Shino noted to be closer to Asuma. As they sat down onto the table and placed their orders, Asuma finally decided to start with the proper introductions. Like I said earlier, my name is Asuma Sarutobi and I'll be this team sensei. Now to properly introduce yourselves, I'd like to know your name, age, likes, dislikes, hobbies and dreams to the future. As the team leader, I'll go first. My name is Asuma Sarutobi and I'm 27 years old. My likes include barbecue, my family and a certain woman. My dislikes are people without morals. My hobbies include shogi and sometimes reading. My dream to the future is to serve the village well and hopefully start a family. You next, he said, pointing to Hinata. My name is Hinata Hyuga, I'm 12 years old. My likes include my family, and as someone. Hinata said, turning towards Naruto, who didn't notice. My dislikes are bullies and the caged bird seal. My hobbies are training and a bit of gardening. My dream to the future is to prove myself to the ones I love and hopefully abolish the caged bird seal. This certain someone seems to be Naruto. I hope this doesn't interfere with the team dynamics. Asuma noted. Thanks Hinata. Next, he said, pointing to Shino. My name is Shino Aburame and I'm 12 years old. My likes are insects and my clan. My dislikes are people who harm insects. My hobbies are collecting and studying insects. My dream to the future is to discover new breeds of insects. Shino said in a monotone, almost emotionless voice. This kid only thinks about insects. Asuma, Naruto and even Hinata thought collectively. Thanks. Now Blondie, you're next. My name is Naruto Uzumaki and I'm 12 years old. My likes are my precious people, training and ramen. My dislikes are the civilian council and arrogant people. My hobbies include gardening and fine literature. Naruto said, referring to the Ika Ika series, what caused Asuma to chuckle. Naruto, after reading the book merely for purposes, really started to enjoy the series. There was smut in fact, but aside that, the book included romance and a bit of adventure. Naruto even carried a copy alongside his backpack, although he used a black cover to not be labeled as a pervert. Not that he didn't enjoy the more explicit parts, but he decided not to share his admiration with the others, making him what people would call a closet pervert. My dream is to become a powerful shinobi, capable of protecting the village and hopefully help Konohamaru become Hokage. A very noble goal indeed, Naruto, thanks. Now, Asuma said, adopting a serious tone. I must inform you that even if you graduated from the academy, it doesn't mean that you'll become genin. There's a final test, with a success ratio of only 33%. What I mean is that from the 27 graduates only 9 will be able to pass. Shino remained stoic, Hinata seemed extremely nervous and Naruto looked emotionless. Shinobi rule number 1. A shinobi must never show its true emotions, he kept repeating to himself. That being said, you are dismissed. Tomorrow at 7 a.m., you'll meet me at training 14 for the test. As the genin were leaving, Asuma overheard Naruto muttering everything will be fine to his teammates. Ordering sake, Asuma recalled the events from yesterday, when his father announced the teams. Flashback start. The Sandaime Hokage was a brave man, who fought in all the 3 great ninja wars. He was the professor, the Kami no Shinobi, due to his mastery of all the 5 nature transformations. Still he was afraid. Today he was announcing the genin teams to the council and to his jonin. The council room was full, the clan heads, sitting to his right, Inoichi Yamanaka, Choza Akamichi, Shikaku Nara, Sum Inuzuka, Hiyashi Hyuga and Shibi Aburame. The civilian council sat to his left and finally, in his front the elders and Danzo, the old war hawk. Standing onto the back of the room the jonin, Kurenai and Kakashi included. Hiruzen knew that Asuma was probably on his way too. I called you here to submit the graduating teams, he said in a serious tone. Team 7. Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, Kiba Inuzuka. Sensei. Kakashi Hatake. Any objections? Sum and Kakashi raised their hands. Sum, I believed my son was going to be put on a tracking team. I decided to give Team 7 more presents, with Kiba tracking possible threats. Besides, Kakashi specializes in the use of Ninken and will be able to teach him a thing or two. Sum just shrugged. Makes sense, I guess. Now, any objection on this team, Kakashi? No, but I believed I asked for Naruto Uzumaki as well. In the background, some members of the civilian council began the sporadic hostile speech against Naruto, but they were quickly silenced by the killing intent coming from Kakashi and the Hokage himself. Yes, but I decided to assign him to another team that will put his abilities in full use. Hiruzen said, throwing I'll further explain that later, look to Kakashi. Team 8. Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka and Choji Akamichi. Team Sensei is Kurenai Yuhi. Objections. This time Kurenai raised her hand. Hokage-sama, whilst I don't openly oppose to training this team, I believe I personally asked for Hinata Hyuga to be on my team. Yes, Kurenai, you did, but I've opted to place Hinata under a sensei I believe can help her skills more than you do. Kurenai looked sad, but nodded in understanding anyway. Finally, Team 10. Naruto Uzumaki, Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame. Any objections? Hiruzen asked, carefully not mentioning that Asuma was going to be the sensei. The room exploded in uproar as the civilians started to demand that Naruto shouldn't become a shinobi and that he should be put to death. They were once again subdued by the killer intent from the Hokage, Kakashi, Kurenai and some of the clan heads. Hokage-sama, that was Hiyashi Hyuga, who's this team sensei? The room quieted for a bit, clearly curious about the name. Yes, I'd like to know that too. Shibi said in the stoic, emotionless Aburame tone. Well, the sensei for the Team 10 is, Hiruzen said, sweating a bit and carefully putting himself behind Kakashi should Kurenai had a fit of anger. Me. Suddenly, smoking a cigarette, Asuma entered the room. Quickly scanning the room, the bearded jonin saw the woman he loved the most, the woman that he abandoned 7 years ago. Kurenai was still beautiful as he remembered. Said woman was looking at him gasping, like she saw a ghost. For 1 second, that seemed to last forever, their eyes locked and suddenly it was just Asuma and Kurenai, ignoring the entire world around them. However, one of those smug civilians decided to ruin the mood. Asuma-san, good to see you're back. Could you please convince your father that the demon brat shouldn't become a ninja and should be put to the knife instead? Sighing, Asuma stole one last glance to the still dumbfounded Kurenai, before releasing a blast of killer intent directed towards the councilman. As from now on I'm the Jonin sensei of Naruto Uzumaki, so if any of you refer to him as the demon brat or any other pejorative names, actually if any of you even dare to look at him at the wrong way, you won't answer to the Hokage, you'll have to settle things with me. Am I clear? The counselor could only nod and ask to be excused since he wet his pants. Hiyashi Hyuga was the next to speak. Hokage-sama, I'm not opposed to the presence of Uzumaki-san in my daughter's team, but I'd like to ask why you put such team together. Well, Hyuga-san, Hinata is a close-range fighter, whilst Shino is a medium-long-range one. Naruto can hold his own at both close, medium and long range, but his strong point is the medium range. By putting those three together with Asuma as sensei, I created a strong defensive unit where each member's strong point would cover the other weaknesses, and also assigned the best sensei I could find. While I understand Hinata and Shino are heirs and are expected to focus on their clan techniques, Asuma can help Hinata with her taijutsu, and his mastery of futon ninjutsu can help Shino dispersing his insects. Also, there's another reason, but I'd like to the members of the civilian wing to leave first. Hokage-sama, we have the right to, a councilwoman started but quickly was silenced by the Hokage. This is shinobi matter, so your presence is no longer required, so, leave or you'd rather be escorted by the Anbu. As the civilians begrudgingly left the room, the Sandaime proceeded to speak. The final reason is Naruto Uzumaki. Since I'll be giving a description of his techniques, I figured out it would be better to expel the civilians that could sell, or even give for free this information to the enemy. 1 week ago, Naruto Uzumaki completed his first official mission, AA Ranked 1, consisting of the capture of an enemy spy that was acting as a teacher at the academy. The details of the mission and the identity of the spy are classified for security measures. Not only Naruto completed the mission, but he also showed extremely calm and professional behavior, making important decisions on the fly and always considering the best of the village. He can use Kaden as good as Sasuke Uchiha can, and has shown some proficiency on Kenjutsu. However, his natural affinity lies with futon release, this being the reason I assigned Asuma with him. As you know, wind release is extremely rare in Konoha, where in the recent history only 4 people were capable of using me, Danzo, Asuma and the late Yondaime. Pertaining elemental interactions, Futon is weak against Kaden, but is strong against Raiden. Kumo is notorious for their employment of Raiden, so by properly training Naruto with Futon, we could have a defense against Kumo should they attack. Also by teaming him up with Hinata, who already suffered a kidnap attempt from Kumo, Naruto can provide her some extra protection considering she'll be performing missions outside the village. By the time Hiruzen finished his speech, the shinobi clans were pleased with the team arrangements and actually positively impressed by Naruto's skills. Asuma was making his way towards the exit when he was stopped by Kurenai, surprise gone from her face replaced by sheer coldness. Sarutobi-san, Hinata Hyuga has serious confidence issues, and as her Jonin sensei you're expected to help her overcome those issues. Don't fail her, otherwise I'll have to use that jutsu. Asuma expression quickly turned onto a terrified one. Kurenai, you can't be serious, you can't use that jutsu on me. Try me, she said before vanishing on a shunshin. Hiruzen, who couldn't help but eavesdrop the conversation, noticed his son's terrified expression and asked, "What is that jutsu Kurenai was talking about?" "Father, that jutsu is the only N1 SSS ranked kinjutsu in history, don't ask me about it. Kurenai used it on me when she caught me peeking at another woman's boobs 10 years ago, let's just say that I still have nightmares," he said, shivering as he remembered that jutsu. Flashback end. Well, Now the fun begins, he said as he left the restaurant. Naruto was making his way towards his apartments when he noticed the door was open. Something is wrong. As he entered the apartment, readying himself for a fight, he felt a familiar presence behind him. You know, kid, I'm not a fan of cleanliness, but I think you should really clean your apartment. Naruto turned out to see Asuma, smoking a cigarette, as always. Asuma-sensei, I think you should stop smoking. I'm not a specialist, but I believe this smoke can really your lungs. As a shinobi, we rarely live long enough to die of lung cancer, also I coat my lungs with chakra. Asuma replied, shrugging. I see, so any particular reason you decided to invade my apartment? No, just felt like it, now walk with me. The duo walked until they reached a small park. Asuma then stopped, gesturing towards a bench. Now for our talk, he said, sitting beside Naruto. Naruto, my father talked a lot about you. Actually, you are the reason I decided to take a genin team. Naruto couldn't help but open a wide grin. That being said, I could only teach you if I've taken the entire team, but I don't agree with that. You're the best shinobi in this class, even better than Sasuke, so it would be a waste of time if I decided to teach Hinata and Shino. Thankfully I've came up with a solution. Fail the exam tomorrow, then I'll take you as my only apprentice. I promise you that you'll be stronger than you've ever dreamt of. Naruto stood there looking at Asuma, maintaining a emotionless facade. So what's your answer, Naruto-kun? You. Tomorrow I'll kick your and then I'll report you to the Hokage for even suggesting me that. It doesn't matter if you're his son or Konohamaru's uncle. Tomorrow I'll show you no mercy, and when I'm finished you'll wish you never left the capital. Is that so? Asuma asked with an amused smile. Your choice sealed your fate, he said before disappearing. Training Ground 14 was basically a grassy plain with some trees and training dummies around it. Basically, it provided a lot of open space, whilst clearly lacking commodities. Naruto reached the area at 7 a.m. sharply, only to find that Hinata and Shino were already there. Am I late? Actually no, we both decided to show up early. Shino explained. You guys are nervous too, right? The duo just nodded. Naruto proceeded to take his Ika from the backpack and started to read it, sitting under a tree. 5 minutes later, clearly bothered by the silence, Naruto decided to rejoin his teammates. Look guys, we really don't know each other well, but right now we need to cooperate. Asuma is strong and as a genin our only shot at beating him is a good strategy and teamwork. I agree, so what we're going to do? Shino asked. Let's get to know each other abilities, I'll start. Unknown to them, Asuma was sitting on a tree, watching the conversation. I've seen everything I needed to see. My ability is the use of the Jukin to close. Hinata was interrupted by the sudden appearance of Asuma, who stood there stone-faced and surprisingly not smoking a cigarette. Are you ready to the test? He asked impassively. Naruto looked towards his teammates who nodded to him, before responding. Yes we are. Asuma then lit up a cigarette and smiled. You pass, congratulations. What? Was the collective yell of the group.